The United States will lift COVID-19 travel restrictions for fully vaccinated foreign nationals effective November 8th, ending historic restrictions that, for more than a year, had barred much of the world from entering the country. That's according to the White House Friday, which said non-U.S. air travelers will need to show proof of vaccination before boarding a flight and will need to show proof of a recent negative COVID-19 test. Visitors crossing a land border will not need to show agents a negative test result. The U.S. has lagged many other countries in lifting such restrictions, but now tens of thousands of foreign nationals with relatives or business links in the U.S. will be able to visit again, as long as they're vaccinated. Allies welcomed the move. The White House announcement came just days after it said it would lift restrictions at its land borders and ferry crossings with Canada and Mexico for vaccinated people in early November. There are still some questions on the new policy for foreign nationals, including how and what exemptions the Biden administration will grant to the vaccine requirements.
U.S. retail sales surprisingly rose in September as consumers seemed to keep spending despite product shortages and higher prices. Sales were up 0.7% last month, according to data released Friday by the Commerce Department. The biggest gains were seen for sporting goods and hobbies and general merchandise. Sales at gas stations were also strong, but that's due to the spike in gasoline prices. A key measure of the retail sales report that corresponds most closely to the consumer spending component of the quarterly GDP number was up last month as well. That's a positive for the economy since consumer spending is responsible for nearly 2/3 of all economic activity. On the downside, health and personal care spending, sales of electronics and appliances were also down last month, pointing to much talked about production delays and supply shortages. There are fears that supply constraints could disrupt the holiday shopping season by making products harder to find, then sticker shock when consumers get to the front of the checkout line.
Robert Durst, the real estate heir who was sentenced this week to life in prison for murdering a friend in 2000, has COVID and is on a ventilator, his lawyer told the Los Angeles Times. Durst, who appeared sickly during his sentencing on Thursday, quote, looked worse than I've ever seen him, Dick DeGuerin told the Times. It was not clear where 78-year-old Durst is being treated. Durst's sentencing for the 2000 murder of Susan Berman was long-delayed punishment for a man who mostly evaded the law for close to 4 decades. Durst was long a suspect but never charged in the disappearance of his wife Kathleen McCormick, who went missing in New York in 1982. Last month, a jury found Durst guilty of shooting Berman in the back of the head at her Beverly Hills home. The jury also found him guilty of the special circumstances of lying in wait and killing a witness, which carries a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Evidence from the trial indicated Berman helped provide Durst with a false alibi in McCormick's disappearance. Prosecutors alleged that Durst killed Berman because he feared she would reveal what she knew to authorities.
Being a cop today is one hell of a lot harder than it's ever been.
President Joe Biden spoke to hundreds of uniformed officers on Saturday at a memorial service to honor law enforcement officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. The event, which took place in front of the Capitol with guests including FBI Director Christopher Wray, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and First Lady Jill Biden, honored 491 law enforcement officers who lost their lives at work in 2019 and 2020.
And to the families of the fallen, you've suffered an enormous loss. But understand, your loss is also America's loss. America's loss. And your pain is America's pain.
During his remarks, Biden also credited law enforcement agencies with upholding the U.S. political system during the January 6th riot at the Capitol, called for more resources to be allocated to law enforcement officers, and expressed sorrow for the shooting earlier on Saturday of 3 deputies in Houston, Texas, resulting in 1 officer's death. Biden has been a loyal ally to law enforcement, dating back to his days in the Senate, when he crafted the 1994 crime bill with their help. However, the president's efforts to pass a police reform bill to tighten practices following the 2020 murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis failed in September. That marked a setback for the Democratic president, who campaigned on the need for policing reforms. The National Peace Officers Memorial Service began in 1982 as a small gathering in Washington Senate Park of approximately 120 survivors and supporters of law enforcement. It has since turned into a series of events, attracting thousands of survivors and officers to the nation's capital each year.
We not only owe them, we owe you.
Meanwhile, the White House issued a proclamation ordering flags to be flown at half-staff at public buildings on Saturday.